What's the stupidest thing you've done at a family gathering? Tell my sister-in-law that her kids, my nephews, are why I don't want kids. Got drunk in front of my great-grandmother and started to shit-talk my entire family in a baby voice to my baby niece. My great-grandmother thought it was hilarious and that I had valid points. Her opinion is the only one that matters here. Got drunk and told one of my grandmas she was my favorite. It was Thanksgiving last year. I was playing Quiplash with my family. I entered my name and the next thing was my aunt asking who is rock hard. Not me but my dad, as a kid, took a tea in the fireplace and went around bragging about it. Hey, the fire is dying, can you put a log in? Sure, unbuckles belt. In my defense, I have epilepsy and was having a partial, or a mini, seizure which caused this. I go into the kitchen and a few cousins are standing there with my aunt. I say sandwich, I think. But my brain was literally just reset about 20 seconds ago and I'm operating at an ultra dumb level. I remember this primarily because there was aftermath to recollect. I took mayo out of the fridge and just throw a spoonful, I think, at the fridge. I then take out cheese and throw it on the mayo. Followed by turkey at the ground and bread somewhere. I look at it and just walked away. My family did not know I had epilepsy at that point in time. That was the icebreaker. I wanted to throw an empty bottle of water at my cousin and I hit my sister instead. It was a wedding. My sister was the bride. According to them, not being married for the 29th consecutive year. Got absolutely hammered the night before and passed out in a snowdrift at the family snowmobile party. Fell off my sled and just lay there waiting for death to take me. Death took too long. So I got up and went back to the group. I'm pretty sure my dad knew what was up and felt that slogging around in the snow all day might teach me not to do that again. He was right. Haven't gotten out of control drunk since Christmas of 1995. Not me, but at Thanksgiving last year my dad once brought out photos of the car crash that killed my grandpa and passed them around to my mom and her family. It was her dad that died, and he talked for like an hour about how bad his death must have been. It was painful to watch as he had only died recently. I asked my brother-in-law how his dad was doing, had significant health problems, forgetting that he had died 6 or 8 months prior. My brother had been overserved and was passed out on the floor in the middle of the group. He was only wearing gym shorts. Suddenly he woke for one brief second and pulled his shorts off. Was not wearing underwear. He had no idea where he was. He was just laying there nude in front of maybe 20 people. It all went completely quiet until my uncle spoke up and said that son of a bitch is hung. Funniest thing I have ever seen. Not me, but my oldest cousin on my dad's side said this at my great-grandma's funeral. Imagine if she moved. TBF. When I was a teen at my godfather's funerals, I had to refrain a crazy laughing bit imagining just that. While my parents were crying their eyes out in the middle of church. My godfather used to be a huge prankster and I suddenly imagined him just sitting up saying "H.A. Gotcha all. You losers." Full stop. He wasn't religious at all. Was young and I had seen him a few weeks prior. So the whole thing, along with a very religious ceremony, seemed very unreal to me. My parents still talk about that to this day. Saying I got my sense of humor from him, meaning I laughed too much for my own good, haha. I was home from college on break and we were playing Trivial Pursuit. The question to me was something along the lines of what adult movie actress has the last name that sounds like the last name of the star of Hawaii 5-0? I knew the Hawaii 5-0 star was Jack Lord. Thought about it for a minute. Then blurted out Tracy Lords. My parents just looked at me like I had just produced a severed head from my pocket. I was with a friend, Dennis, at his family reunion. He sees his cousin arrive with a friend in tow. My friend greets his cousin he hadn't seen in years with, "Hey Joe. You crazy cocksucker." His guest gets in Dennis's face very hostile about his phrasing. Dennis pretty much greeted everyone as a cocksucker. But the other guy insisted there were better ways of saying it. Nobody knew the cousin was gay before that, and in a small town it was a hell of a way to come out. Once I walked into a baby shower for my cousin's wife and sat down in the biggest chair of honor. Right in front of everyone. Including the pregnant woman. My mom looked like she wanted to die. On my husband's side, all the women are house elves during family gatherings, and for years I figured showing up with food and booze was enough of a contribution. It wasn't. At 4 years old, I sat on my grandpa's birthday cake. They'd put it in the seatless back of the station wagon, where I had to sit, but neglected to tell me it was there and didn't have a cover over it. I was probably distracted plotting my next mischief and didn't notice I'd plopped my crazy little butt down on it. My little tights and dress were covered with frosting and the cake was shot. Seriously. Though. They shouldn't have been surprised. I never sat still. So many poor choices. And not a single one of them was made by the 4-year-old. I once had a middle-aged college professor who said he was back east for a family reunion and mentioned he had a hot tub. Later, he overheard 2 of his aunts around the corner. Do you know he lives in California and has a hot tub? Oh. I was watching Ni Hao Kailan and learned how to say dinosaur. Grabbed every single adult that was there. Pointed at my toy dinosaur and said it. They all left immediately. Close bracket. Edit. Also, I haven't been on Reddit very long and it was really nice to wake up to upvotes. Now that's wholesome as heck. I'd love if a kid did this to me. At my grandpa's funeral I went around saying good luck. I was about 7, and I wanted to play in the graveyard while the others were standing around his grave. I hit on my cousin not knowing she was a cousin. I'm part of a really big family. I went to a quinceanera for one of my cousins, met this beautiful girl. Her and I were flirting pretty hard back and forth when my mom walks up. Oh good, you met Dana, she's your second cousin from your cousin Rita's marriage. I know some might say second cousins are different, but not in my family. Luckily my mom noticed and warned us as things were getting hot and heavy. A few knowing uncles and cousins were nudging each other. We were both pretty embarrassed and unsuccessfully played it off that we were just joking around. We did become really good friends still after that, no weirdness, and it's def a funny joke between us now. Second cousin from your cousin Rita's marriage. That means she wasn't even related to you. She's a cousin to the person cousin Rita married, who you are not related to. At my brother's confirmation, the whole family, almost 60 peoples, were sitting outside in the sun drinking coffee. I had a big idea as a 12-year-old to show them all how badass I was at doing saltos on the trampoline. Guess what? I was a little too fast when going around. So I took the salto and my belly slammed down hard enough to beat the sickest fart out of me. I was just as surprised as the rest. At a pool party when I was 11, I yelled out to everyone to watch me swim the entire length of the pool underwater. Dove in and almost swam right out of the bikini I was wearing. Made an abrupt dive to the bottom to adjust myself. Resurfaced to laughter and mockery. Walked 2 blocks to a bar with the entire wedding party and my family from a cousin's reception. My mother included. At some point she was ready to leave. I walked her back to the hotel and made sure she got into her room. I decided to walk back. For 1, I didn't know what time it was, and for 2, drunk me took forever to make it back to the bar. Arrived back at the bar. Nobody is there except for staff that are closing up. Sit on the curb outside the back of the bar and pass out. Wake up being slapped in the face by a police officer. It was 3 AM. I had been passed out in a parking lot for at least an hour and a half and I got driven back to the hotel by a police officer. Hard plastic backseat in the squad car. Showed up drunk. Several times. They quit inviting me. One Christmas, my family gathered at Graham's for dinner. One of my cousins brought a karaoke machine. This turned into everyone participating. But not just participating. Being made to pick a song and sing and dance in front of the rest of the family. Horrifying. So many terrible vocalists attempting to win a Grammy. So I'm paired with my cousin, brother, and uncle. We decide to pick something easy. I don't recall what, but it was an upbeat, does not require vocal talent type of song. As we sing, we're kinda throwing up hand signs as we're going. Well, my hands don't exactly cooperate and I end up throwing 2 giant middle fingers up. I died a bit inside when I look over and see an aunt is recording my awkward childhood. Immortalized forever. Instrumental introduction. Main theme. Trumpet stops momentarily. Tequila. Middle fingers rise up for all to see. I have a cinema room in my house fully kitted out. I use it as a room for growing tomatoes though. Decided one Christmas to host at my place and invited the whole family over. I had only been living there for a few years and growing tomatoes in the cinema room was normal to me and I didn't really think about it. Nephew found tomato room and I paid him $100 to keep his mouth shut. Stuck to his word. Surprising for a 12-year-old. Okay, so tomatoes weren't really tomatoes, right? Otherwise, I'm confused. I have an uncle who has been married multiple times. This uncle did not come to my wedding for God knows what reason. I asked why he couldn't come to my wedding, but I had been to 4 of his. My cousin got wasted. I just lost about 70 pounds and my alcohol tolerance had gone with it. Though I hadn't really tested it recently. And my husband's, then boyfriend's, family really likes wine. And I just kept topping off my wine without really paying attention to how much I was drinking. I became an uncoordinated mess and almost broke several gifts by accident. And I was still not the worst drunk at the party. 2 other people also got wasted and had a screaming match in which I was blessedly not involved. Took an edible before walking into the gathering. Was probably the most likable and social version of myself. It was awful cause then they expected me to be like that at all of the following ones and that's just not realistic as the gay cousin of our traditional Christian family. Why not just have edibles before every holiday gathering? I just remember a family wedding and everyone at my table started to use the tablecloths as bandanas. The same tablecloth? I'm just imagining a group of people walking around the hall tied together by a tablecloth. I was in my young 20s. Had only just started drinking beer and didn't know it can freeze. I put a few in the freezer to chill them faster during a holiday gathering. Later I went to grab one and it seemed fine. But I didn't know it had already started to freeze. I was talking to my sister's boyfriend in the middle of the kitchen while holding a beer I just opened. Somehow it exploded and I didn't notice. And it shot like this beer slush up onto the ceiling above me. I took a step forward while not paying attention and the slush came back down all over my head with the entire family watching the whole thing happen. Took an edible with my wife on Easter one year. We don't ever smoke or take edibles, but for some reason we thought it would be a good idea since we were hosting her side of the family. After 30 minutes and uncontrollable laughter between her and I, she went to the room and couldn't leave the bed. That left me to entertain everyone and make sure food was happening. All while I was high as a kite. Everyone asked me if she was okay. All I could do was laugh. Her cousins picked up on what was going on, so I had to tell them. After a couple hours of holding out, she was well enough to come out and I went in and passed out. Needless to say, it's brought up at every holiday with her family. And we haven't had any since. Brought up my uncle's boyfriend. He's married to a girl. Made out with a cousin I had never met before. Cards Against Humanity caused us to have to explain to grandma what buckache is and why his kids were laughing so hard about it. Not take my own car. Trusted a fart. Wasn't me. However, I watched my drunk sister use the N-word with my 12-year-old nephew. The look of horror on everyone's face made it worth going to Christmas that year. Acid. Bruh, why would you do that? My gay brother tried to start a fight with our pastor uncle about gay marriage at our father's funeral. He kept asking, "I bet you'd never marry, officiate, One of my kind. He tried more than once after the uncle refused to engage and walked away. It was incredibly awful and I'm still pissed about it almost 10 years later. When I was a kid, my parents brought my sister and I to a family wedding. There was this videographer that kept coming by and asking us to smile, wave, and say something. Well, for some reason my sister and I were annoyed by this and my sister dared me to give him the middle finger next time. I don't think either one of us knew what it meant because we were so young, but we knew it was bad. Well, sure enough, he came by again and asked us all to wave. Everyone waved and I gave the middle finger. No one seemed to notice and I shuddered thinking of the poor bride and groom watching their wedding tape and seeing 5-year-old me flipping off the camera. Burned my hand quite badly protecting a younger cousin from being burned. He's a dick. FCK him. I should have let him melt his skin off instead of mine. Well, skin melted on 4 fingers. He knocked over a high intensity work lamp that had been on for hours. The glass was a few hundred degrees. It was dark and he was running to straighten it up. So I pushed him away from it and lifted it up myself. Fingers touched the glass and I heard a sizzling noise. Told my very religious great aunt that the only god I believed in was Thor. This was right after seeing the first Avengers movie and I was still pumped at it. Went to a family gathering. Showed up in costume with my then significant other, also in costume. We had come straight from another thing where it actually made sense to be wearing them. The scheduling was really tight. And he insisted it would be totally cool. Even appreciated if we showed up as we were instead of changing. It wasn't. Lol. People just kept asking. But why are you wearing that? So fking awkward. It was my birthday and I was too stoned for my own good. I was gifted body wash and right off the bat I assumed it was moisturizer. I slathered it on my forearms. My family just watched in silence until I figured out what was wrong. The room exploded with laughter as I ran to the restroom. At a family reunion I brought up how my cousin was on Girls Gone Wild. That didn't go over well with my aunt. I haven't seen her video. When I was 7 I thought I could manage eating 3 Easter eggs, half a pizza and a McDonald's Happy Meal in 3 hours. I would have been fine as well if I hadn't have eaten a Cadbury's creme egg as well. Walked around chugging wine out of the bottle that I was also serving to people at a family reunion. And then drinking Jack. And ending up passed out in the bathroom before dinner. Tried singing once. Felt like Mary Bennett afterwards. At my dad's wake I told his older sister, who I might have met when I was very young but have no memory of, that he never mentioned her. He talked about her all the time. That's kind of sad. Did you ever tell her the truth? When I was around 12 I stole my mother's dentures as a dare and put them out in the windowsill. I forgot about them and it snowed. Time to eat TG dinner and mom had frozen teeth and could only gum her food. When I was younger we would get some chips and drive around popular parks and walk up to family reunion and act like we belong. Eat free food and leave. I talked to people I have never met in my life that thought they knew me. Took acid the night before a NFL football game with the grandparents. Half hour after my friend and I took it I thought it was junk and we went back to my house to crash. Then somehow we ended up in the bathroom staring at the floor till 4 AM. Slept for maybe 2 hours and by that I mean the head of every person I'd ever met was flying through the air at me and would veer off at last minute. Thought I was okay on way to game. Just tired. Then at halftime my grandma asked me if I was okay. I was like yeah why? Apparently I hadn't said one word or made one noise the entire first half, which is very odd for me. And here I thought I was cheering the whole time. A few Christmases ago my family got me a taser before my move to a big city. It looks like a little plastic gun. And you have to put a pre-packaged disposable bullet, the little prongs that shoot out and shock the bad guy, into the end for it to work. That was obvious. What was less obvious was that without the bullet, A taser will still work as an old-fashioned stun gun, which you can just poke at a bad guy and shock with direct contact. I grew up with guns. I know they're harmless if you're careful to make sure they're unloaded, including the chamber if the gun has one. My family's given each other real guns for Christmas many times, always in a safe condition. I thought this non-lethal weapon was pretty simple, so while demonstrating the empty taser without the bullet inserted on what I thought was a safe weapon, I managed to shock the ever-loving shitty out of my hand with its backup stun gun functionality.